The video game Rinpanego is a wildly successful 1998 adventure game. It is a parody of detective and film noir fiction from LucasArts, and is famous for a number of reasons, especially its soundtrack. It's set in the land of the dead for Mexican folklore, and the story follows Manny Calavera, who is a travel agent for the crooked Department of Death. The Department of Death is meant to guide souls to the afterlife, but corruption has taken over the once transient city of El Naro, and instead of passengers receiving their rightful tickets for the number 9 train straight to the other side, henchmen and opportunists have made a home there, working under the sinister Hector Lamans by stealing the tickets for themselves to gain passage to the afterlife. Love interest Mercedes Meche Colmar is caught in the crossfire when Manny uncovers the conspiracy through the lack of a number 9 ticket and her case file. What unfolds in the game is a 4-year journey steeped in Mexican folklore and film noir references as Manny attempts to find and save Meche, all while avoiding Lament's slackities. Amid critical acclaim and its status as a beloved adventure game, Peter McConnell's soundtrack and its blend of different musical cultures is available not only for its staying power in the gaming zeitgeist, but also for its light-witted use of instruments. The soundtrack, as with many other games before and after it, makes ample use of light-wits. Although there is much scholarly debate on the minutiae of the term as explored by Dr. Stephanie Lin, it's heretofore being defined as a theme or other coherent musical idea, clearly defined so as to retain its identity and modified on subsequent appearances. So, the melody, harmony, contour, and rhythm of a musical phrase can combine to form a larger oral symbol, but instruments alone can also serve that same purpose. I'll be referring to this concept wherein the timbre of an instrument serves a leitmotif-like semiotic purpose as light timbre. In a game, an instrument typically has a connection to a narrative theme, and by extension, one or more characters whose arcs are connected to the development of that narrative theme. Domino and Olivia are associated with the saxophone, and Meche is associated with the acoustic guitar. But to analyze these specific instruments chosen and why they're there, we must first analyze one of McConnell's major compositional influences for the score, which is film noir. I put a couple of examples on screen that people might be familiar with, which include the multi-stocking and the big sleek. Film noir essentially you can just think of as the private eye hired to investigate a woman's cheating husband, and then he accidentally uncovers a drug ring in New York City in 1942. It's basically the gist of most of them there. In the original wave of noir films from the 1940s and 50s, Richard R. Mess observes that the original soundtracks were largely atonal and symphonic, but that jazz was used diegetically in scenes meant to demonstrate the decadence of the nocturnal environment. Ness then cites Kathleen Kalinak's analysis of jazz and musical othering in his examination of noir soundtracks, wherein jazz represents the sexual, the urban, and the decadent, playing upon stereotypes that create a sense of otherness within the soundtrack. Neo-noir films of the 70s and 80s, so the next wave in the noir genre, would use more prominent jazz elements in their scores to evoke the idea of noir in the mind of an audience, intending to, quote, generate a feeling of the way audiences think film noir sounded. This phenomenon is part of what Thomas Yee refers to as segregationism within music, where tropes evoking exoticism, minstrelsy, and musical stereotyping serve to brand music outside of the Western European convention as noticeably different with a derogatory connotation. In the context of the character of Domino, the saxophone is selected for his introduction to highlight his dubious moral character. He's a lackey working for the boss, Hector Vans, and Manny and the player can instantly tell he is up to no good upon meeting him. The following is a clip taken from very early in the game where Manny interacts with Domino directly for the first time, and a saxophone takes the lead on a piece titled Domino's Office, Act Space it represents. The second clip I'll show you is from later in the game, where the saxophone is still present but in a much more subdued manner.
My old door. It's Domino Hurley, the sweatiest man in the office.
You gotta sweat the cell, Callie, and you know it.
Well, at least you're not hitting the bottle anymore.
Hey, Callie, how you doing?
So, how'd you make out of the poisoning?
Well, let's just say that Sister Calabaza has a secret passion for trains.
So very early on in the game, the saxophone has been incorporated due to its jazz associations and, as an extension, its film noir associations to code Domino as a villain. The musical language of film noir would use jazz to code villain and crime, and McConnell is drawing on that language here by introducing the character in that first played with the jazz piece. A player's first impression of Domino will be reminiscent of any previous exposure they have with film noir as a genre: crime, treachery, and depravity, that sense of otherness. Further narrative context heightens the musical coding that's happening here. In the first clip, Manny owned an office before Domino, but has since moved to a smaller one next door, and he's doing much worse in terms of sales. Domino's saxophone theme takes over the soundtrack in the same way that he took over Manny's office, demonstrating a shift in power in narrative themes. Manny has entered Domino's domain, and thus he has entered a world of shady tactics. Additionally, the piece Domino's Office lacks clear melodic direction and definitive cadences, which serve to add a level of uncertainty to the situation. The player is left with many unanswered questions and with a lack of uncertainty around the world's moral stability. Of course, a huge portion of the game's soundtrack uses jazz of varying styles, so the symphonic jazz of Domino's office alone is not a distinct enough connection to act as a motive for his character. That saxophone, however, is. This concept is illuminated when analyzing the music from much later in the game in that second clip I showed you from an area called The Edge of the World. When Manny enters Domino's office then, the typical orchestration exploration music is being played, but another layer is added when Domino takes off his Walkman headphones to talk to Manny. There's a saxophone present. The instrument is out of place among the more cinematically orchestrated investigation music, but it's still emblematic of Domino's scheming and attempting to take control of the situation even though he is years away from El Morro. The saxophone is creating temporal continuity music associated with villainous characters, serving as an oral indicator of nefarious intentions and the corruption that is pervading the land of the dead. Olivia Ofrenda, who was introduced in this game's second year, is a main example of this continuity. Olivia owns the Blue Casket, which is a rival club to Manny's Calavera Cafe in Rubalcaba, which is just a parody of Casa Loca. Immediately, she hits all of the characteristics of the femme fatale, which, as J.P. Collins describes, she's overtly sexual and manipulates men to get what she wants. She frequents bars, clubs, and other seedy establishments and betrays the detective. However, in the end, she usually gets punished for her misdeeds. As Olivia says later in the game, I had a taste for bad men. So the following is her introductory scene in the game, where Manny is stumbling upon her in year 2 in her club in a sort of compromising situation.
Come on, sugar. How about a kiss for the road?
Oh, ick. Don't let me down, Nick. You're a lawyer. You're not supposed to have feelings.
I don't, but I know a good tart when I see one. Hey! If Maximino sees that, we're going to end up in matching terracotta pots.
Don't be silly. He wouldn't hurt me. He loves me. Manny, at last we're alone. Tell me, how are the bourgeoisie?
So when the player walks into the Blue Casket for the first time, they're met with that fast, improvisatory style alto saxophone in the main club area. And when they're introduced to Olivia for the first time, she is emerging from a closet with a man who is not her boyfriend, while this bebop-style jazz plays in the background. This creates a chain of association between her and Domino. Introducing Olivia to the sound of saxophone in the piece Blue Casket Bop produces the same effect as with Domino's office. The player has already encountered the saxophone's strong correlation with an obviously villainous character, and being presented with the saxophone again in a club environment indicates a similar nature in this new car. It also reaffirms that Rubalcaba, although a different area in the game compared to the original city of El Morro, is perhaps even more shady and ripe with depravity. The leading woman in Manny's love interests, Meche's motives and desires stand in stark contrast to Olivia's. Meche was an outstandingly kind person in her life, which is precisely why Manny steals her case file from Domino, thinking she's a shoo-in for the number 9 ticket, but of course, she's proven wrong when no such ticket exists. During her first appearance, when Manny comes to reap her soul, the player is met with Latin-inspired acoustic guitar as is singing high notes on strings in the background. The piece also serves as a romance theme for Manny and Meche, and the guitar forms a light timbre, as is demonstrated in the following 2 clips, the first from Meche's first introduction, and the second from, again, year 3 later on when Domino is holding both Manny and Meche hostage.
Buenos dias.
You're not the nurse?
No?
You're not here to give me my medication?
No, but I am here to ease your pain.
Guess they couldn't save me, huh?
No, but there's still a chance you could save me.
That's a lot of responsibility, Mr. Calavera. What makes you think I've been all that good?
And the second is a clip from 2 years later in the game when they've been reunited.
Meche,
Manny, what are you doing here?
I wanted to see how your trip was going, Angel. I am your travel agent, you know. By the way, thanks for that bottle of champagne you sent me. It really hit the spot.
You were headed for a trap. I was trying to warn you. Domino was using me like bait. I didn't want you to end up a prisoner here like me.
Prisoner? Where's your cell? Or are you just sharing a bunk with the warden?
If that's what you think of me, then why did you come here?
Because this is where he belongs. Here.
So immediately, Meche's theme has conformed heavily to the feminine romantic cliché, which Tomasi defines as a trend of film and by extension video game music, where a recurring musical theme serves as both a theme for the love interest and as a theme for the film's romantic plot. The Latin inspiration for the guitar does deviate slightly from the traditional formula, as it's been not using a conventional Western orchestral instrument, but it blends well with the FRC's trend of high-string instrumentation, slow tempo, and arpeggiated nature. Rather than drawing from jazz influences, the use of acoustic guitar places Meche's musical cues as part of what Peter Vercano refers to as the game's backbone of classic Max Steiner-style orchestral underscoring, referring more to an older era of Hollywood rather than specifically war films. Meche is presented as loving, kind, and good in a world that the player has otherwise seen to be occupied by cynicism and corruption. Upon her arrival in the story, Meche's association with the acoustic guitar immediately signifies her as a safe character, and one whom Manny will form a deep connection with. Subconscious associations of these musically gendered traits combined with the musical and extra-textual references to that phonic language that Mikano plays with participate in this gender construction of Meche as a woman serving Mandy's emotional and narrative development. The acoustic guitar functioning as a light timbre for Meche becomes apparent in his role with Mandy meets Meche again in that clip from the end of the world. The acoustic guitar cuts from the soundtrack again, but only briefly as Domino enters the room and interrupts them. In that later example, the notes are not the same, but the acoustic guitar is that musical through line. It serves as a sonic reminder of Meche's presence after Manny has been apart from her for so long. The game is reaffirming her connection to its protagonist and their budding romance. Additionally, the guitar fades when Domino enters the room, demonstrating the narrative position her and Manny are in at that point. There are more urgent matters in the main plot that they must address before either of them can fully realize the romance building between the two of them. During that scene as well, Manny has also accused Meche of secretly working with Domino rather than being held against her will. Meche denies this, and the player is led to believe her denial through the presence of the acoustic guitar as well as the absence of the saxophone. It's that absence of jazz instruments, specifically the saxophone, when Meche and Manny are alone, that places Meche outside of the semiotic chain of villainy that exists between Domino and Olivia. In conclusion, Grim Fandango contains a myriad of other characters and musical ideas, but the use of the saxophone and the acoustic guitar are so vital because of their overall connections to film noir tropes as a result, their overall narrative significance. Mikano makes use of neo-noir's use of jazz to represent crime, the sexual and urban to code Domino as a villain as soon as the player meets him, with the saxophone serving as a light timbral effect for these ideas. The continuity of this instrument in relation to Domino at further points of the game, even when the actual melody from Domino's office is absent, continues to signify the scheming nature to the player. The association of saxophone ability continues with Olivia in Peace Blue Cast of Bob, with the game taking both inspiration from Ben Details of noir films and using the player's musical associations with Domino to foreshadow her inevitable betrayal or protagonist. In contrast to both, Meche's musical confirmation to the feminine romantic cliché sets her music apart from Olivia and Domino and codes her as both an ally and as a love interest to Manny, signifying her motives to the player even when Manny is doubting him. Even with just these two instruments, Mikano's score demonstrates the efficacy of light timbre in conveying information to the player, whereby drawing on other media from within the same genre enables a composer to musically communicate with the player using just the sound of a specific instrument.